Hello, everyone. Welcome to a subpar edition of ARG Presents. I'm your Midland to mediocre host, Amigo Aaron, joined by a man that gets 1 to 1.5 stars out of 5. I give you the Brent.
I want to know when we're not the remedial 2 out of 10 show.
Well, see, less said about that, the better, the Brent. But it is fitting this week because last week we spun the wheel. We made the sort of low-end deal, Brent. And this week we're going to be playing games that are, bam, reviewed at 2 out of 10 or less. 2 out of 10, Brent. That's 20%.
Yeah.
These are games that are not good. They're not well-received games. And then we added on sort of the stipulation that we're going to try to defend these dogs right up to the bitter end, just to make it a little more exciting for ourselves. How did your hunt for a game that you could hang your hat on at 2 out of 10 go?
Well, here's the problem. I knew exactly what 2 out of 10 games I would like to have played.
Yeah.
Because I was going to ET it, right? ET, easy. Everyone hates ET. Super easy to defend because it's a good game if you read the manual.
Yeah.
So that's where I was going to go. And it got voted down by the Discord. So I thought, okay, Pit Fighter. I'll throw Pit Fighter in there. I know you love Pit Fighter for whatever reason. So
I don't love it. I don't love it. I like the arcade version. I thought it was interesting and wacky, but I wouldn't say I love it. Let's go there.
So Pit Fighter, horrible game, but also super easy to defend.
Yeah.
But then the game I chose, I actually hate. So defending, it's a crap game.
Yeah.
There's no worry about that. But actually defending it is going to be a challenge.
Well, I'm not going to lie to you. I went through a whole host of choices. For whatever reason, I was drawn to Saturn this week because there are a couple games on the Saturn that I think are amongst the worst games, including the one. My first choice was going to be a game called Pinball Graffiti, which is a game myself and Boat stumbled upon during our Saturn play sessions years and years ago, where you play a down-and-out basketball player who's trying to gamble his way to glory on one-on-one basketball games and pinball. It's a very odd game, but I'll save that one for another time. Another one on there was that Golden Axe fighting game, another game that I found absolutely reprehensible. But I went ahead and decided.
It's not good.
Oh, yeah, I mean, it's like, what were they thinking when they did that? There's plenty of games where they were like, fighting games are hot. Let's take our non-fighting property and actually just turn it into a fighting game. Like, that's one that comes to the top of my head. But the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles did it. Star Wars did it. A lot of people did it. And inevitably, they were crap. Because, newsflash, you can't just put a bunch of guys in the game and have them beat each other up and make it a good game. There's balancing and stuff. They put stuff into that. They don't just put guys out there. So those were two games that I considered. And ultimately, before I stumbled onto the game that I ended up picking, and trust me, this game came across fully by research. I really had to go and get in deep when it comes to this. Now, on to the matter at hand here. 2 out of 10 games. Over the years, a lot of games have gotten really low reviews, and then sometimes the public has mellowed on them. We're looking at one now if you're watching the video, the original Pac-Man for the Atari 2600, where it got panned when it was released. But ultimately, I don't think I would not consider it a 2 out of 10 game, for example. Would you? Do you think the Pac-Man for the 2600 would be a 2 out of 10 game, or E.T.? Do you think these games are so bad that they are 20% games?
Well, for me, a game to get a 1 or a 2, they have to be actual dysfunction.
Yeah.
They have to have dysfunctioning parts, which that's tough. That one game that we had to review for the what was it? The Amiga 32X or the Amiga CD32, where it actually physically hurt me.
Microcasm.
Yeah, that is an easy 1 or 2 out of 10 game.
No, I disagree with you on that. When I think,
but
go ahead.
I think if a game is functionable, and it's tough to get that low of a rating if they're functional.
Yeah. When I think games that make me hurt, like to look at or to play. I also think about games that, like you said, actually don't work right. When I think bad games, games like Top Banana come to mind. Not to beat dead horse, but that game physically hurt you to look at and listen to, which make one wonder why would they do that for something they're trying to sell for your enjoyment. It's almost like they don't understand the concept of selling games. Like they don't fully grasp what that means to make them appealing to you. So that's one that comes to my mind instantly. It also can mean really bad ports is another thing that'll happen that makes you want to jump off a cliff. And we've seen plenty of those over the years, or attempting something that the system just quite handle. Like, everyone tried to do a game like Afterburner, and that just couldn't pull it off. And so what you end up getting was a big, blocky disaster. I also think of games that, like you said, literally weren't quite done. They didn't work right. Like a game like a Battle Cruiser from back in the old DOS days. So there are plenty of things that'll get you into the realm of 2 out of 10. Can you think of your favorite ever game, 2 out of 10 game that you actually enjoyed, and despite the fact that, how about a game that everyone else hated, gave 2 out of 10, but you kind of liked? Do you have one that comes to mind?
Super Pitfall.
Super, you just saw that on the screen.
No, Super Pitfall.
You mean the arcade version?
No, NES.
Oh, okay. What?
NES.
Why? Why that one? They make that that's also for the Coco, and I hated that game.
I was actually going to pick that because I thought it'd be an easy defend, but I didn't see anyone there. I saw a couple people put it on the worst games of all time list, but I don't know. I don't see it. I'm okay with it. I know why people hate it. It's because it has the actual puzzle elements, finding the hidden blocks and crap, is kind of stupid, but I didn't mind it. I thought it was a fun platformer.
Well, listen, I've played worse, but still, I wouldn't call it fun. That's probably 2 out of 10. You never know. It wasn't too hard to find bad games, though. But like I said, to find one that fit this category was difficult. I'll go ahead and lead the dance this week, Brent, since I'm not confident in my ability to defend this game, but I'm going to give it a shot. So I looked all over, like I said. And finally, what I came upon, and by the way, I looked for games that truly were given a 2 out of 10 rating. If these aren't like 4 out of 10 or 5, this sucker was 2 out of 10. Okay, so because I know how you are, I didn't want any controversy. I didn't want you to call me out. Hey, this game got a 3.5. I don't want that. This is a straight up 2 out of 10. I get to refuse to prove it. The game I chose is an arcade port, and the game is called Guerrilla War. Not that kind of gorilla.
Yeah.
This is a soldier type gorilla. That's my gorilla voice. What'd you think? No, didn't like that. So, Guerrilla War, Brent, was an arcade game before it got ported. Now, I'm not looking at the arcade game. That'd be for suckers. I'm looking at
and it wouldn't fit the category.
I know. I'm looking at the C64 port. That's what I'm looking at. So let's talk, but just briefly, let's have a quick look at the arcade version so you can get the ambiance, so you can get the full effect of what I'm talking about. Guerrilla War came out way back in 1989. This is an SNK game, the Brent, and this is from their line of games that had the old rotary controller. Man, do you remember? Did you play a lot of these rotary controller games?
Absolutely.
Yeah, these were good. I thought the rotary controller was real neat. So, So what do you get here? Well, what you've got here, excuse me, this came out in 87, by the way. I can't read. Again, this is from SNK, and the rotary controller is a joystick. It's a joystick that you turn in a rotary way, and it clicks in, okay? And so what this allowed you to do is turn your character in a segmented way, like, if you're watching the video.
8 degrees of rotation.
Yeah. You had some of these, just to name some of the SNK ones, you had, aside from Guerrilla War, which I'd say Guerrilla War is probably the least known of the ones that I remember. You had Akari Warriors, Midnight Resistance, and Heavy Barrel. I worked at a pizza place for years, and Heavy Barrel was the game we had there. And so I've watched the intro to Heavy Barrel about 4 million times. That's the one where you assemble a huge gun. And a real good game. So these rotary games are fun, and they're not easy to emulate. I mean, you can play these at home, but without having the rotary controller, it's not really even anywhere near the same gameplay. So, Guerrilla War, again, this was a 1 to 2 player game, And this was sort of your tried and true gimmick. You're a guy, you're rolling up to a bunch of other guys, shooting them, throwing grenades. The gimmick in this was you could get to this tank, sort of this comedic, like Shriner's car / clown car type tank, where your whole half of your body sticks out the top like a geek, which makes one wonder what's the point of being in a tank if that's the way you drive the tank. I always thought that was funny, the way that works. And you go up and fight the bad guys. It's pretty standard fare. One of the wackier things about it, Brent, is that in the American version of this, it's just sort of some generic guys. In the Japanese version of Guerrilla War, you play as Fidel Castro and Che Guevara. You actually play as them. This is truly the Guerrilla War to win Cuba from the
that makes no sense.
From the Batista dictatorship of the 1950s. So you're literally guerrilla. This is the original Guerrilla War. So when this came to the U.S., they were like, maybe we ought to tweak that. We don't necessarily want Fidel Castro in the game. We're releasing in the 80s. That might not get over here in the States. But, I mean, if you think about it, Che Guevara and Fidel Castro in the game, it's called Guerrilla War. It does make sense. It gives you some structures to what's going on. So I at least gave it a shot. Come on, I gave it a shot. What the heck? So this game was, I would say, a marginal success. I mean, I had heard of it. I had played it in the arcade. I saw all the other games we talked about in a Midnight Resistance, Heavy Barrel, and Ikari Warriors. I saw them way more than this one.
Absolutely.
And there may be others. These are the 4 that I chose to focus on. So this thing got ported, as one would expect, because hey, that's what people did. And so this got released for a whole host of machines, including the Amstrad CPC, the NES had a port of this. There was the old PC booter disc got a port, and of course a lot of modern systems got it through various collections, and the Spectrum got it. I want to point out the Spectrum version in particular. We're going to get to that in a minute. Well, the C64 got it as well. Let's talk about...
Oh, they got it all right.
Let's talk about the C64 version. It came out in 89. It was produced by Sentient Software. I learned something today. I was pleasantly surprised when I was researching, or yesterday, whatever it was. These guys did Hate. You'll recall Hate. H period A period T period E period. Me and Boat, I think it was, looked at that Arsene Claire.
Yeah.
And then this is the one that gets me. You know, I'm a big fan of the Young Ones, Brent. You know that. The Young Ones is a British TV show from the early 80s. And it goes against, it's a story about 4 college students that share a flat. It's high comedy of that era. It was real groundbreakingly stupid. Abe Emerson is the guy that played Vivian in the show, and he released a book. And the book was, and I'm going to get a little blue here, but it's the name of the book. The book was called How to Be a Complete Bastard, okay? Now, I love this book. We actually had a copy of this book at my buddy's house, okay? I don't know where it came from. It's because it was from the UK. There's a game based on that book, and it's produced by these people. I learned that this week. It makes me so happy. So somewhere in the future, I'm absolutely going to have a look at that game in some capacity. This was developed. This was also put out there by Imagine. They were also behind the production of this game. If you're familiar with these guys, you will remember that they're famous for having a bunch of people go out and spend money on these sports cars and crap, and then they flamed out. Ultimately, all of them lost everything because they all went bananas. They also founded a racing team. That like they went bonkers. If you know anything about them, you should look into them. I thought that was pretty funny. So what you got here with Guerrilla War and the C64, very poorly done port. I don't know exactly where they brought this thing from. It could have been. I have read that they brought it over from the ZX Spectrum. It's hard to say, but whatever they did, it does not look a whole lot like the arcade. Of course, the arcade was a vertical, up and down shooter. They've taken full screen. It runs slow as heck. And what they've done with the graphics on this can only be described as sort of like they're very granular. Would that be a good way to put it, Brent? Or I mean, they're very grainy looking sprites. Like, they did not go into the higher res modes here on the C64. That's for darn sure. And so what you get is a real low-end look to the thing. On top of that, there are various parts of the game that are pretty important. One of the things you do in Guerrilla War is rescue hostages. Now, in the arcade version, the hostages are tied to stakes. They don't move like this, and they just sort of wiggle a little bit. In this game, when you come across the hostages, they look like they're doing a very stupid dance. That's all I can describe their actions as. They're just literally bebopping around like this. So I'm assuming in this one, the bad guys couldn't afford a stake to put them down with, so they just sort of tied their feet together. Or just maybe they were just bored and wanted to watch these guys dance. Oh, here they come right now if you're watching at home. Another thing, what's the big draw of this game, Brent? You can take your guy and get in a tank, right? No, you can't do that on this version. There's no getting in the tank. You can watch the tanks go by. That's it. It's slow as heck. It's plodding as heck. In the arcade, you've got various scenarios where you go across these bridges into these villages, lush greenery, greens and blues, big bodies of water. In this version, you've got yellow. I mean, lots of yellow and brown. It's ugly as heck when you look at it. The pits in this are supposed to be trenches. They just look like dashes on the screen. They're just horrible looking graphics. The explosions are ugly. The bad guys in this are dumb. They just shoot a lot. They don't move, which makes me wonder if they just basically put the AI in these things just to basically fire on a set scale when you got nearby. They don't even necessarily shoot at you. I wouldn't say it's an easy game, but you can get. I got pretty far in it, and that was not wanting to play it and not liking what I was seeing, but I still did the best I could to get through it.
Okay, let's back up a second.
Yeah.
Okay, first of all, I don't think the graphics are that bad.
Really?
The graphics are not the problem with this game. And although you haven't mentioned it, and also, like, when you go, the trenches you're talking about, when you go over, get into a trench, your guy actually goes in halfway into the trench.
Sorta, yeah.
So, the graphics are not the problem with this game. The sound.
You don't think the graphics are bad in this?
No. Nope. I'm not saying they're good. Okay? I'm not saying, like, yeah, this is like top tier C64 graphics. I'm saying I know what everything is. I know people look like people. Tanks look like tanks. Sandbags look enough like sandbags that I know what they are. Graphics are not the problem.
Okay. Well, I'll just
let's talk about sound. Go ahead.
That's where I'm going. So,
okay.
And this is one of those games in the true Amiga tradition where you get to choose between sound effects or music. Now,
yeah,
I never chose sound effects. The sound effects in this aren't great. The music in this is actually pretty good. And this is where I was going to hang my hat. If this game has one strong point, I think it's the tunes. You disagree?
No. The music and sound effects of this game are tremendous.
What, tremendous? I'm not sure I'd go that. I'm not going to hang out on a limb like that. But I think they're pretty good.
They're the highlight of the game, without a doubt. I mostly played sound effects. Which the gunshots and the explosions are not earth-shattering by any means.
Yeah.
But they at least sound like, gunshots and explosions, kinda. They distinguish themselves. They have that up and down, like, whistle sound whenever you throw a grenade to show the grenades going up and then down.
Yeah.
The sound of this game's okay. It's okay.
Yeah. I think, first of all, listen, I appreciate you putting the game over. You're doing a better job than I did because I couldn't.
Oh, don't worry. The pain's coming.
So, I did a little work up here just as a comparison between this, and I think maybe this will give you a better idea of how crummy it looks. If you look at the arcade version of this game, the arcade version, I mean, granted, it's not going to be perfect, but one of the things they did here on the arcade version, like I said, it's a vertical game. By stretching this thing out, I don't think they did it any favors. If you look at the ZX Spectrum version, for example, keeping in mind the ZX Spectrum, less colors, less to work with, but it's way, way better looking. Like, they look so much better than this version. And what they did was they made it a vertical game. That's what made it work better. Because this game, one of its biggest flaws is, in gameplay wise, is that since they chose to make this a horizontal game, things come on the screen in a much quicker. They come at you with that, and you don't have the ability to react. So right away when you're playing this, like, one of the first things you do is walk up this path, and these 3 soldiers come lumbering down. You know what I'm saying? And you can't even see them. You're like, ah! So what I learned to do in this game was just shoot perpetually at nothing and just hope to God I shot whatever was appearing on the screen when it came down. Now, what was your take on the gameplay, Brent?
Okay, this is where the game earns its 2 out of 10 reputation and cannot be saved. You have not saved this game at all.
Well, I don't. I know it doesn't need to be saved. It's not good.
No, the whole point was to defend your game.
I tried.
The game is unplayable for 3 different reasons. Reason number 1, you've kind of mentioned. It took a vertical game and then smushed it to fit a 3x4 or 4x3 ratio, which gives you no time to react. Things come on the screen, and if you notice in the arcade version, bullets do not travel the full length of the screen. They go a certain amount and then
that's sort of a staple of the SNK games like that. That's sort of what they do.
Well, the reason why that is it makes bullets dodgeable. When you see a bullet, if you start pulling back, you can readjust and then, assess the situation and go from there. You cannot do that in this game because there's not enough real estate. The game does not scroll backwards nearly far enough.
Yeah.
Occasionally, you will get a small amount, and then that's it.
Yeah, I agree.
Thing number 2, there are situations in the game where you will be killed by off-screen enemies. Either they are shooting or throwing grenades. Completely unacceptable.
Yeah.
You cannot retaliate because their shots... I mean, everyone's shots go the same distance, which appears to be infinite or nearly infinite. But the problem is... the enemies know you're there. You don't know the enemies are there. So you can't do that in a game. Okay.
I agree.
But all of that can be forgiven because you could theoretically memorize where everyone is and make it through this game. You wouldn't want to because the game's not fun.
No.
But you can soft lock the game by moving up the screen in a position where you should have been to the left or right. Unbeknownst to you, because the path you needed to take is not on the screen at the time.
Yes.
And you will actually soft lock the game. You are allowed to destroy barriers. Some barriers cannot be destroyed, or if you run out of grenades and there's no enemy there to kill you, that's it. You're done.
Yep.
The game soft locks.
Yep.
You cannot have that in the game. That shows that this was not play tested. This was just produced and put into a box.
Well said. And I will say that happened to me on several occasions where you just run out of real estate. You're like, crap. And you know when it happens. You know because you're like, well, I'm boned. Time to start the game over. It's the worst. That's the problem with this game. First of all, I think the biggest flaw is, in fact, the draw distance on the bullets and the guns. You're right. You can get killed instantly, like the second you come back out, and by something you don't even see, and it's the worst.
Yeah.
Because I wonder if they took... I don't know what they did. It's almost like they were started on a vertical game and they decided to stretch it out to make it fill the screen. I don't know what their plan was on this, but the plan was a monumental failure on all around. Plus, the one thing we didn't discuss, and this was the problem with all the home ports, was this is a rotary joystick game. And so when you take that out of the game, what you're left with is, at the very best, you're going to have sort of a run-of-the-mill running gun because you've taken away the best gimmick.
They allow a rotary option.
Yeah, what is that? I was wondering about that too. Like, how did they sell a joystick for this? I couldn't find anything that let you have a rotary stick at home. That would have been neat.
I would assume that it just had keys that allow you to walk one way and then face another. I did not use that method. No. The game had way too many flaws to even explore that type of gameplay. However, something else that needs to be mentioned is you can't move and shoot or throw grenades or shoot at the exact same time. At least I wasn't able to.
I did this method, the start and stop method, to do that. Because you're right. You sort of have to shimmy up the screen to throw your stuff. This game, you can tell a lot of love went into making this. So much love that the scheduled Amiga and ST ports were canceled. So I'd say that once they got to the C64, like, all right, we're done with this game. We destroyed this sucker. I will mention this game also has the boss fights in it. They also are no good. And the bosses are just, in fact, 2 of the bosses I think are the same boss with a huge palette swap. But that's a discussion for another time. So anyway, I give this the enthusiastic thumbs down. However, I'm gonna ask you this, Britt. Is this a game that is 2 out of 10 or less?
No, this is I mean, the game is unplayable. I would say that this is a 1 out of 10 game.
Oh,
because I mean, the game is actually physically unplayable.
Yeah, unless you get lucky, or I guess if you memorized it completely, you could probably get through it. I'm sure someone did that, but it wasn't going to be me. I looked around to see what the people scored this thing. So the people in Lemon scored this a 2.8. So they were slightly above our thoughts on it. CVG scored a 17%. Commodore Force 19%. Commodore User 21%. Zap 19%. ASM gave it 18%. Power Play gave this 17 out of 100. Total score, Brent, when you average all those out, 1.9 out of 10. Horrible game. We did get some action on the Discord on this thing. Let's start off with Pajako. He writes, "War, huh? What is it good for? Absolutely nothing. Which is the score this game deserves." I like how he mixed that in there. It is brutal, from getting trampled by soldiers before you barely started to off-screen enemies that can kill you before you see them. Sounds familiar. Crunchy scrolling, poor collision detection, and messy graphics make this a bargain bin filler. Also, no drivable tanks. That's one of the great things about this, the Akari, and it is sadly missing. Honestly, I tried to ignore this game's faults, but it just kept kicking my keister. At some point, I switched on Unlimited Lives and kicked this game's behind, so I never have to play it again. The music, however, is awesome, and it deserves to be the better game, 2 out of 10. I think I pretty much agree with everything you said there. Oh, he said...
Yeah, he said, for full disclosure, I did play this game with Unlimited Lives.
I did not, so there you go.
Then you didn't get anywhere.
Update, I switched on Infinite Lives and ended up getting stuck. Yep, I did have that without the Infinite Lives. Jack Flack chimes in. Guerrilla War. You know that annoying thing that happens in horror movies where the monster is just off screen and the hero can't see them, even though the monster is only a few feet away? This game is like that. Every time I move forward, 3 soldiers appear out of nowhere and kill me, even though I should have seen them coming. Good thing I'm armed with a pea shooter that fires about 10 bullets a minute. One thing that makes this game fun is getting shot in the face over and over by enemies who aren't even on the screen yet. One of the Commodore 64's best selling points was I had so many colors to choose from. Why did developers only use 3 of them? Whoever designed these levels deserved to get caught in one of Rambo's booby traps. I would not be surprised if the graphics for Guerrilla Warfare were done by the actual gorilla. I like that. The sign of a bad game is not that you can't beat the first level, but that you don't want to. Making people play this game is a level of torture that violates the Geneva Convention. Not a rigging endorsement from Jack Flack, Brent. I will say that. I did look this up on eBay. You can get the disc and the manual just by themselves, no box, $9. Complete in box has sold recently for $20. So if you want to go down the road for Guerrilla War, I would give this a shot. Otherwise, I think the revolution has ended and the guerrillas lost, Brent, on this one.
Everybody lost in this.
Listen,
and your defense of this game was horrible.
I can't defend it. I picked it, I played it, but I couldn't defend it. I tried. God knows I tried. Let's see if you do better, Hotshot. What did you bring to the table this week?
I went with a game that I owned back in the day, and I actually owned for the NES, Deadly Towers.
Oh, man, yeah.
This was released in 1987. here in North America, 86 in Japan. The developers are Lanier and Tamtex.
All right.
Two developers I have never heard of.
Lanier of Babylon 5 fame. Not really.
And this takes you through the life of Prince Meyer, who is getting ready to be crowned king and is sitting by a lakeside. And all of this is explained in text. Scrolling, white text, black screen.
It's the NES way.
Yeah, no, it's not. No, remember, NES had Ninja Gaiden first cutscene in a video game. So he's sitting by this lake, and a spirit arises from the lake named Khan. And Khan says, listen, evil is about ready to overrun your kingdom. From this wizard named Rubus, the devil of darkness. You've got to stop him by gathering up these bells that he's using to summon these demons and throw them into the holy fire. So you can, after you do that, you'll actually have the power to kill them. Go and actually hunt them down after that. So that is your task. Pretty generic task, but really not the worst thing in the world. Prince Meyer is this weirdly shaped warrior. On the box, it has this picture of this incredible, muscular man holding his sword, shield to his back, huge legs, and fully armored in plate mail. But in game, you're this little blue guy that has horns on his helmet, and he doesn't stab things. He throws a sword.
He looks like a geek, by the way. He looks like a dork, like a kid in a suit.
He's not the most.
He doesn't look like the box.
No, he's not the most relatable character, or maybe he is.
Who's the guy? Who's the guy that's from Mars on the Bugs Bunny shows? Remember that guy? That's who he looks like. Marvin the Martian.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't look like Marvin the Martian. So you have to traverse this landscape, which is mostly this medieval castle type affair, to climb the 7 towers to recover the bells to burn them in the holy fire. And that will open up the gates and drop the force field of the bad guy to let you go fight them. The enemies in this game are all over the map. You've got your traditional bats and blobs and puddles, but you also have literal round bouncing blue balls. You've got these just pixels that are sprites, skeletons. It's a very diverse crew. And you've got plenty of boss battles and mini bosses in this game. Some of them are palette swaps. Some of them are just the same sprite but larger. So that you do have that kind of problem. And you run through the game fighting to get these bells to go up the towers. The question of this game is, why is it so bad? Now, Aaron, did you get to spend any time with this?
Oh, I've played this before, so when I going back to it, it was like getting close to a friend you hate and you dropped long ago. Get this out of here. This is the answer to the question: what if the guys that made Marble Madness wanted to play a D&D game? This is what it reminds me of. It's like Marble Madness levels, and some of the enemies from Marble Madness, the balls, the puddles are here. It's like, what in God's name is this? And they even took the good marble and put a torso on him, and he's the hero. It's like a Marble Madness Dungeons and Dragons adventure. Listen.
Very, very, very interesting take on it. So the reason why this game is universally hated, this often finds its way on it almost always finds its way on the top worst NES games of all time. And it often finds its way onto worst games of all time's list. The reason why is you move slow. You are in an isometric landscape but all the enemies and heroes are 2D. So you struggle to move because you always are running into corners. You move very slowly. You attack very slowly unless you are right up next to an enemy. You throw a sword, and if it misses and it travels off screen, it actually takes seconds, like 2 or 3 seconds, before you can attack again. And during that time, you're just left completely vulnerable. Another horrible aspect of this game is when you get hit, you get thrown back several feet. It's not like a small bounce. You get absolutely wrecked. You can also get chained, where you'll bounce off of 2 enemies, or if an enemy catches you in the corner, they will just continuously hit you over and over. You do have invincibility frames, but they're fake. So you are invincible, but only while you're traveling backwards. So if you travel backwards into a wall, you will just get pinned there. So your invincibility frames will run out. You won't be able to move in time, and you'll just get hit against the wall again. You also start off incredibly weak, and the enemies will take sometimes 10 to 20 shots, just a normal enemy, before they'll go down. And they can kill you in 1 to 2 hits. While you do have a health meter in this game, it's very small to start out with, considering how much damage that the enemy can do. All of this compiled together with not the best graphics, but you have to remember this was early NES. So it does. I think the graphics aren't what's here to complain about. The sound in this game, the music is actually really good.
No.
But no. The music is really good, except every time you change screens, because it's sort of a mix between a scroller and a flip screen game. Some of the screens will scroll, but when you get to a door or something, it flip screens over. Every time you go through a flip screen, the music restarts. So you hear the opening, 4 or 5 measures of the song over and over and over again, which is very grinding. But the music itself, if it just played out and you got to listen to the whole tune, is not that bad.
So hypothetically, the music's good, is what you're saying. Because it's not in the game, it's not. You hear dee-dee-dee-dee-dee-dee 1,000 times in this game.
And it does have different music for different layers and for the boss battles and whatnot. And some of them are very catchy. The other aspect of this game is you do get equipment to become more powerful, not only by your attacks, but by your defense. You also have the ability to get potions, healing potions. It even goes as far as having like cursed items in the game. Like some items will actually make you weaker, if you can believe it. Unfortunately, all of the items, so you've got your 7 towers, right? You have to climb up for the bells. There are also 10 dungeons in the game. And all of the dungeons have hidden entrances. And I don't mean like you push a rock aside and walk in. I'm talking there's a blank space, and if you walk your guy into it, you'll sometimes be in a dungeon. The dungeons are made up of 256 rooms. That's 16 rows across and 16 rows down. And they are not mapped, which means you get lost incredibly easy. And the worst part of the dungeons is, as with some other places in the game, you will enter a room at sometimes, get hit immediately, get pushed out of the room, but if you have to go that direction, maybe it's the only direction you have without going completely backwards, you'll do it over and over and over. And sometimes you'll be able to sneak by, but most of the times you'll just get hit, go out of the room, and eventually die. All this compounds into a really bad game. And I don't mean like Aaron's game, where the game is not a game. Aaron's game wasn't a game. It's unplayable. This game makes you think you can play it, but is so hard and so convoluted with all of its different hidden areas and getting lost and no sense of direction or what to do. It's that kind of bad game. Now, Aaron, I know you played this in the past, right? Because I own this game, like I said before. Is there anything that you remember distinctly about this game?
I remembered all of it. I mean, I came right back to it, and I was like, oh, yeah, this disaster. You know, here we're back again. Listen, this game, the bones of this game could have been something pretty good. But, I mean, and listen, music aside, or the geometry, getting stuck on geometry aside, all that stuff aside, the biggest faux pas in this game is the fact that you can't hurt anything ever. And it takes forever to get anywhere. And you can, and this stuff, could they not just, I hate games that just have random crap shooting out everywhere. Like, is this an exploration game? Is it a shooting game? What is this? Well, what it is not fun. And it's because they tried to do too many things, and they only needed to get one thing right. They could have just had your guy explore all these huge areas, occasionally have some creatures come out, and that would have been fine. And give you the ability to hurt them. I think they made a poor choice in the weaponry with the shooting. You know, that's no good. I think they made a poor choice with the way the characters look. Now, I know a lot of NES games have these cutesy characters, but when you see the cover of this game, it's called Deadly Tower, and I remember firing this thing up and being like, what is this? You know, a kid's game? What is this little geek? And the bad guys are even cute. I hate that. It's one of my pet peeves. If it's going to be a cute game, don't call it Deadly Tower. Call it Happy Tower, Cute Tower. Don't put a big muscular killer on the cover. Put a stud. But that's...
Well, I don't think they meant it to... I don't think they meant the character to be a cutesy character.
He looks like a geek. And shooting the swords is horrible. I hated that. It's okay to shoot swords, but like you said, they fly so slow. It takes forever. And it takes so many hits to beat these guys. It drives me bananas. It is annoying to get caught on the geometry, but I think the game actually looks pretty good. I've never understood the bad side. I don't know why people badmouth the look of it. It's not the most colorful game, but I mean the 3D is pretty well done. I think. You know.
I personally don't have a problem with the graphics.
I think if you would have spent more time in actual game design and made it far less difficult, because there's a lot to explore. I mean, what's the point of having all these dungeons and stuff if you can't get to anything? You know, it's so hard. Now
here's how I'm going to defend this game, Aaron. This was never meant for an American audience, a North American or European audience. This was developed by a Japanese company, two Japanese companies, and they developed this for a Japanese audience. The absolutely 100% hidden entrances, the long sprawling dungeons that you have to map out, the incredible difficulty, especially in the early days of the NES, these were all pluses, check marks for a Japanese audience. It's a type of game where you're not just going to sit down and beat this thing in an hour. And there is a password feature, but anytime you die, you always go all the way back to the beginning.
Brutal.
That's
brutal.
You still have your main items. You lose all your inventory items like potions and money and stuff like that. But you still have your main items, like how many bells you've destroyed, that kind of stuff. But that makes it brutally hard because you have to climb up these towers. And sometimes there's like 8 or 10 enemies on the screen at the same time. In that way, it's really impressive. But the game is brutally hard, and you have to climb up the bell towers and back down the bell towers.
Yeah, I hated that.
There's no easy exit. So what you have here is a brutally hard game, all these hidden entrances, right? And secret rooms that you almost have to find to get the armor and weapon and power-ups and stuff to accomplish a task. So you really have to explore. You have to walk in every little nook and cranny, even if it's off the beaten path and not the direction you want to go. You have to map out those 10 dungeons because inside the dungeons are shops, and you have to go to these shops and buy potions and upgrades and scrolls and stuff like that to complete the game. It has to be done. So this was made for a Japanese audience, and when it came to North America, it wasn't pushed, right? It got some marketing, it got some stuff, but it just sat on the shelf like all the other games. Because it was translated, yes, it did get English translations, but it didn't get any tweaks. And something we know from Super Mario Brothers 2 is Nintendo of America started looking at these games and saying, you know what, that's too hard. We have to dial down the difficulty for the North American audience, or they're going to hate it. So this is what happened, right? That wasn't in place at the time because this came out fairly early. It made it onto the score shelves. Now, Aaron, this released the same year as some games I think you might be familiar with.
All right.
Games like Russian Attack, Akari Warriors, Burger Time, Kid Icarus, Rygar, Elevator Action, Double Dribble, Spy Hunter. These are all NES games.
Yeah.
Mike Tyson's Punch Out, Rad Racer, Top Gun, Wizards and Warriors, and Castlevania. In 1987, this was the highest selling game in North America.
Wow. No kidding.
This was the highest selling game in North America. And because of that...
That is mind-blowing.
And because of that, it is in a lot of North American people's minds, right?
Yeah.
Because this was a part of a lot of people's childhood. And for that reason, a lot of people look back at this game and say, this is the worst game I've ever played. And they're probably right? Because this was a part of a lot of people's childhoods. And when you see some of the games around it, Castlevania, Top Gun, those type of games that played better and was more geared towards the North American audience. This was not geared towards the North American audience, and I think that's why it gets more hate than it actually deserves. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I can listen. This first of all, this is a better game than a Guerrilla War. Okay,
absolutely.
This is
because this is a game.
This isn't a 2 out of 10 game. It's, I would say, more like a 3.5, 4. But because there's a game here, it's just not fun. It's also too hard. Okay, and it's got flaws we talked about before. But listen, if you are looking at a magazine or something back in those in that year, and you see this game and you see the ad, you can see how this would appeal to people. I mean, I think the graphics, listen, the graphics for that era are real good. I remember seeing this game and thinking to myself, wow, this looks great. And the adventure of it, the towers, the bell, all that crap, that's appealing. It sounds awesome. You know, I'm sure a lot of people were like you were when you got it. I remember you playing this a lot, but I don't remember you ever saying, man, this is great. I'm having a great time.
Yeah.
You know,
because I never felt that
I'm
way.
not surprised they sold a lot of these, and I'm also not surprised a lot of people hated it when they got it home.
And just to throw out a reference here, because I was completely blown away when I found out that this was a best-selling game. The reference for this is Computer Gaming World issue 50. That is where they made that claim that it was the best-selling. It was designed by the same crew of the best-selling Deadly Towers.
That's crazy.
So, yeah, it's. I think this was made for a Japanese audience, and then it got into a North American hands, and they didn't know what to do with it. I don't think that makes it a bad game necessarily. I just think it was a game tailored for someone else, and North America ate it up.
Did this have any sequels or anything?
No.
Because you'd think if it sold that well, they would have tried to capitalize on, don't you?
It was really hated. and full disclosure, it wasn't renowned in Japan either. While it was definitely geared towards a Japanese audience, it wasn't nearly as hated as it is over here, but no one in Japan's like, oh yeah, Deadly Tower is a great game.
Yeah.
Or as it's called over there, Masho, I believe. So there you go.
I've got some Discord action on this, but if you're interested,
Absolutely.
Pajaka wrote, "I am a Deadly Towers noob. I'd never played or heard of this before this week, and my initial impressions were positive. But a couple of minutes in, I can see why it gets a bad rep. It has a lot of annoying glitches and design flaws, like instantly hitting enemies as you enter a new room and dying baddies leaving unreachable pickups. This has all the hallmarks of a game that would be at home in a landfill. However, I feel like I could sit down and play this for longer, and I didn't actually hate it. So yeah, at some point I will load this up and play it again. 6 out of 10, Brent. 6 out of 10 on that. So you got one. You made one convert, if anything else. I'm assuming this didn't review well back in the day either.
It didn't review. Yeah, there are no official scores from the era of this game.
Crazy.
And I looked.
Crazy.
I looked. You can buy this game today. You can get a loose cart for about $10. You can get the total package for about $60.
Yeah.
So I think that's about what things are going for anymore.
Yeah. Well, so let's close this thing out, Brent, with a little post-game discussion. I'd be interested of these two games, and I know you'd played Deadly Towers before. You never played Guerrilla War. Would you go back and play?
Not the C64.
Would you go back and play either one of them again?
No.
And on that somber note, let's spin the wheel and get the heck out of here. There you go. So, Brent, this week we've added a new piece, new 16-bit games this week, and the retro piece, Game Gear. The Game Gear, Brent. So, how do you feel about this thing? We got a lot of crazy systems on here this week.
Can't be worse than last week, or I guess technically this week.
All right, so we're going to give this thing a whirl. Here we go. All right, I'm rooting for a system this time around. And we got, what do we got here? Holy smokes. The Benetton AY-3-8500 core from Hermsky. Now, Brent, what do you know about the Benetton 8500 core, my friend?
Nothing.
You don't know nothing about the core?
This is one of the bad ones.
Hermsky, I think, stooged this off to me a while back, and I think this is going to be better than you think, believe it or not. Because, listen, it's the Benetton AY-3-8500 core. You know it's gold. Listen, we were just talking about how we'd like to get into something different. That is different. That is absolutely different for sure, man. How crazy. So, that's what we'll be leading with next week. We'll get some Benetton action. Right? Any parting thoughts this week as we're winding down it's the summer here. It's the end of August as we tape this. And we know fall is coming.
Please cool off faster.
Please cool off.
I'm so done with summer.
It's been brutally hot here. And with Brent's work air conditioner being down and my car air conditioner being down, we have both suffered mightily over the past.
Absolutely.
It's been brutal. So I'm hoping I'm with you.
I want to say a special thanks again to Air Shack. Unfortunately, due to the weather, I was unable to get you added into the video. But next week, whole new video, so we should be good to go.
There you go. So please join us next week when we take a exciting look into the land of the Benetton. Until then, sayonara.
Oh, thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the show. We want to say a special thank you to Duncan Styles for our vector style graphic and BarkBit for our amazing music. Would you like to help keep ARG spinning for as little as $1 a month? You can do so at patreon.com/ARG Presents. Just like these fine folks.
Z9K9, Jerry Dennington, John Dykeman, Retroalgy, James Shackle, Texas Foosballer, Sundown, O-Rom, Super Tech Boy, Dave Terrence, Mr. B, Roushi, Graham W. Betke, Dave Velociraptor, Bernhard Lucas, Steve Rasmussen, Anthony Jarvis, Pachaco 6502, Kevin Bean, Andy Jones, Andy Craig, Rob Flack O'Hara, Jason Warren, Nitsuyama, Chris Bowles, Frodo NL, The Slow Norris, John Schaller, Carrie Heather, Terry Howard, Olaf Hope, and Rolo.
Supporters get access to the Discord channel and their names called out in credits. Don't want to explain another credit card bill? That's okay too. You can leave us a positive review on Spotify or Apple iTunes. Have an idea for a wheel piece? Send it to us at argpresents@mail.com. We film live every Sunday, 10 a.m.